Greetings, old school magic players, and welcome to the Four Horsemen.
Welcome, old school magic players, to a Saturday night with the Four Horsemen. I'm the Chatster. I'll be your host this evening. We're going to be covering a Four Horsemen tournament number 14 semi-finals match. Our tournament 14 is ongoing now, and if you've seen our prior videos, you know that the Four Horsemen focuses on the original first four expansions of Magic the Gathering, Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and the Dark. Only cards from these four sets, the basic lands and the dual lands, are allowed. You can get a look at our banned and restricted list here. You see the sets and lands across the top. The only cards from the Alpha, Beta, Unlimited baseline sets are the basic lands and the dual lands. And our restricted cards are laid out here. A lot of the unique power lands and some of the control and power cards from Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and I don't think we have anything. Well, we do. Maze of Ith is from the Dark. So yeah, spanning all four sets. There's at least a few cards restricted from most of those, and then several banned cards on the bottom here. This is the 7th or 8th iteration of our banned and restricted, and our players really seem to like it. It's really helped balance out things with restricting and banning a lot of these really powerful game warping cards, and we've got our eyes on a few other cards, to make sure that the format continues to be fun, enjoyable, and playable. This tournament started in May 17th and is running through June 16th. It's June 8th today, so we are actually moving into the last week of the tournament. We've actually finished up our quarterfinals early. We finished these up on Friday, and we're starting the semifinals and finals today. If you'd like to learn more about Four Horsemen, Old School Magic, just go to fourhorsemenmagic.com. You can join us at facebook.com/group/fourhorsemenmtg. All right, let's get into the brackets. The tournament number 14, we missed several of the quarterfinals videos. I think we're probably only going to have John's match, but you can see the results here. John beat Michael 2-0. Frantisek beat Jean-Simon Jobert, JS, as he goes by, 2-1. And I think we've actually got that match, perhaps. No, but that's not right. We have one of JS's other matches that was a group match, not a quarterfinals match. Tim Kincaid won 2-0 versus Harvey Bunda. And Tim Weingand lost his match to Christopher Zach 2-1. So Chris emerged victorious there. And tonight we're going to be covering the match between Tim Kincaid and Christopher Zach. Let's take a look at the decks. These two decks are both very interesting, and I aptly named Tim's deck the Underworld Sanctuary, and for Christopher Zach's deck, I've named this Unstable Djinns and Efreets. And what we'll do is we will take a look at these two decks now. Do a little bit of deck tech, take a look at some of these cards. The players are going to be joining us in about 10 minutes, so they're scheduled to start here soon. And then we'll do the match live. Okay, first let's take a look at Tim's deck. The Enchanted Underworld Sanctuary. This deck is really interesting. This deck has all kinds of really powerful enchantments. This is, I think, Tim's second Four Horsemen match tournament ever, and he has really quickly zoomed in on powerful ways to put the cards in the format to their best use. And enchantments are extremely powerful in Four Horsemen. Some folks have, said, "Oh, I don't like playing without disenchant," or "There's no way to deal with enchantments in Four Horsemen." Well, those individuals may not know the card pool very well. There are a lot of cards actually that can deal with enchantments, particularly enchant creatures. Avoid Fate is a fantastic card that counters an enchantment that targets a creature. Boomerang can bounce any permanent back, including enchantments. Desert Twister can destroy any permanent. It is expensive, but it can take out any one card. 2 green and 4 colorless. And Presence of the Master prevents any enchantments from being played. So, there are challenges dealing with enchantments for sure. But to say that there's no ways to deal with enchantments is simply not true. And it's a misnomer. The other thing is Legends is full of world enchantments, and any enchant world can destroy any other enchant world. So, you can take out Abyss with a Concordant Crossroad or a Field of Dreams. So there are a lot of cards that actually deal with enchantments. You just have to take on the challenge of playing around these. Disenchant is one of the most powerful commons ever printed, and it really makes most enchantments just not that great. Here in Four Horsemen, as Tim has zoomed in on, the enchantments are the powerhouses of the format, in addition to a lot of the really powerful creatures. So this deck is really cool. I've actually made a slide that shows some of the really interesting and kind of unique cards that are in this. We've seen Ashes to Ashes in other decks, but definitely Tim's running that. He's running Greed. Greed is an enchantment from Legends that you pay a black and you draw a card and lose 2 life. His deck, Tim's deck, revolves around life gaining as well, and we'll talk about that. Oubliette, it exiles a creature. It doesn't target the creature, but it targets the creature, but it doesn't enchant the creature. So Oubliette is a very powerful enchantment, but it can be dealt with things like Boomerang or things like Desert Twister. Spirit Shackle. Spirit Shackle is a very unique enchantment that we rarely see anyone else running. 2 black, and you put a -0/-2 counter on target creature every time it becomes tapped. And the counters remain even when the enchantment's removed. So a really powerful enchant creature spell to deal with creatures that'll take them out. If they're small, or if they attack a couple times, it'll, unless it's like an Urnham Djinn or something, it can only attack twice before most creatures will bite the dust. Underworld Dreams, really powerful enchantment, deals 1 damage to your opponent for each card they draw. The Abyss, this has been restricted for a while. In Four Horsemen, all players bury a target non-artifact creature under their control during their upkeep. Now, when it comes to this bottom row of cards, all these cards have really great synergy that Tim's built in. A lot of life gain. Fountain of Youth is a very powerful long-term life gaining card where you can basically gain 1 life per turn for the entire game. Ivory Tower works great with land tax, which Tim's also playing. Gain 1 life for each card in your hand above 4. Interestingly, there are only 2 creatures in Tim's deck. 1 Triskelion and 1 Clay Statue. And those are immune to Abyss because they're artifact creatures. And Triskelion can ping other creatures where, when it comes in, if needed, using the -1/-1 counters, and the Clay Statue can regenerate. It's a really powerful comment from Antiquities. 4 mana, and it's a 3/1, and you can pay 2 and regenerate it. Very powerful, underplayed card. Land Tax. Land Tax has been powerful for a long time. Next to Spirit Link, these are probably the 2 most powerful enchantments in white. And Land Tax allows you to grab extra lands, basic lands, your Ivory Tower during your upkeep, and your Ivory Tower then can trigger after and gain life for the any cards above 4. So you can quite easily have 7 cards, grab 3 lands, and gain 10 life. Super powerful life gain mechanic. And then you can use Greed and to draw extra cards, and Ashes to Ashes to get rid of creatures and exile them. Spirit Link. Spirit Link neutralizes any creature pretty much from attacking. And then Spiritual Sanctuary is another very interesting life gain card that Tim is running. two white and 2 colorless from Legends. Any player with planes under his or her control gains 1 life during their upkeep. So there's a lot of synergy with this deck. It's almost all enchantments with just a couple creatures. There's also a Tawnos Coffin, as well as some Divine Offerings, Jaloom Tomes, Fellwar Stones. Tim is running 20 lands, and he's running a Maze of Ith and an Island of Whack Whack and the proxy there. We do allow proxies in Four Horsemen. And he's got the 1 Mishra's Factory, but no Workshop, no Mishra's Workshop, and no Strip Mine. So interesting choices on the lands, but he is running 12 basic lands, so he can use land tax to get whatever lands he needs, and hopefully he gets it early and gets that Ivory Tower out and start gaining. He's running 2 copies of Greed, so likely to draw one of those in maybe half of his matches, and then he could start using his extra life to draw extra cards. Really powerful. In the sideboard, he's got 2 Blights that destroys a land when it's tapped. The Skull of Orm, super powerful. It's a artifact that costs 3 from the dark, and you pay, I think, 5, and you can return an enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. So this allows Tim to recycle and reuse his enchantments. That's very powerful. An extra Divine Offering, a Dust to Dust, to get rid of extra artifacts if needed. Millstone here. That's a great choice because if he runs into a longer control game, he's going to need that Millstone to run his opponent out of cards. Greater Realm of Preservation. He's got 2 of those in the enchantments from Legends. That can, you pay one white and 1 colorless, and it can protect damage from any black or red source. He's got a Cleanse that it destroys all black creatures. A couple of Kumbaj Witches. That's an interesting choice. Those guys are really powerful, or those ladies rather. 1/3, and they are able to deal damage to any target and have a damage dealt back to you. The Felden's Cane, that's also good with the Millstone, and an extra Underworld Dreams for those long games, and a couple of Preachers to steal his opponent's creatures. So I really like this deck by Tim. It's no surprise that Tim's made it into the semifinals with this very powerful Enchanted Underworld Sanctuary deck. All right, let's take a look at Christopher Zach's Unstable Djinns and Efreets deck. This deck is also interesting, and it's interesting that it runs white because a lot of the same cards between Preacher, Land Tax, and Spirit Link are shared amongst these 2 decks, but this is primarily a blue aggro deck with all the great blue flyers, and we can zoom in on a couple of those. Flying Men, Serendib Djinn, Serendib Efreet, Unstable Mutation, Zephyr Falcon, and then he's also playing some flash counters, a couple of flash counters, a Recall, Mana Drain, which is now restricted, and then of course the cards we highlighted earlier, the Land Tax, the Preacher, Spirit Link, and one single copy of King Suleiman that he can tap to destroy other Efreets or Djinns. This deck's also very interesting. It can come out really fast. If he gets a first turn island and a second turn or first turn island Flying Man and a second turn island Unstable, he's going to be hitting in for a lot of damage very quickly. The Spirit Links are very powerful to kind of neutralize some of the disadvantages for Serendib Djinn and Serendib Efreet. You won't be losing life on either of these guys if you have the Spirit Link on them, or you can use the Spirit Link to kind of neutralize an opponent's creature. So that's a really powerful combo. And the Land Tax works great with Serendib Djinn because you can basically sack your lands to the Djinn and then trigger your Land Tax to go get more lands. So you can continue to feed lands. He's got a couple of Telerias here, which is also very smart because Teleria taps for blue, but it's not an island. So he's got a couple of blue sources, and he's going to be... hold on a second. Sorry about that. He's got a couple of blue sources, Teleria, that allows him to tap for blue mana, but not have to take the damage if he has to sack an island. He can actually sack those Telerias and then play another one down the road. So that's pretty cool. It's a very interesting build. We've seen some builds like this very early in the first 3 or 4 tournaments of Four Horsemen, but we haven't seen anything like this lately that really capitalizes on the Serendib Djinn and Efreets with the land tax and the Spirit Links. And that unstable mutation is extremely powerful. So that's going to be one of the critical cards for Chris. He's going to want to get those early. And if he does, he could quickly pull out ahead. All right, the guy's going to be joining here quickly, so I need to wrap up this deck tech. And I'm going to message these guys and make sure. They're going to be jumping into the whereby. So if we were to make some predictions, well, we didn't talk about the sideboard for Christopher. Let's look at Christopher's sideboard. He's got some interesting choices: 3 dust to dust, an extra flash counter, 3 mind bombs or 4 mind bombs, 3 boomerangs, and 4 energy flux. So there's a lot of anti-artifact cards here between the dust to dust and the energy fluxes. The mind bombs are an interesting choice because they can get damage in earlier and make you discard cards. The boomerangs have been proving basically a must for any blue deck. Most of the blue decks now, I figured out, with all the different enchantments between Spirit Link and Oubliette and things like that, and the unstable mutation, of course. The boomerang it's like an absolute must if you're running blue to run 4 of those. I would definitely, if Christopher were to ask for some pointers on this, that's what we would do there. Sounds like the guys are going to be joining. I would pop in those boomerangs main deck and pull out the King Suleiman and the flash counters. Although flash counter can be a really good defense against the it can be a really good defense against other people's boomerangs. So looks like Chris is joining here. Let me say hello to him. Hey Chris, how you doing?
Hey, good, you?
Good, man. Thanks for joining me.
Yep.
I just got through doing the deck techs for the videos for you guys. I planned to time it, just right so we could get this match going with you and Tim.
Hello.
Hey, Tim. How's it going, Tim?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
I was just telling Chris I've just done the deck tech for both of you guys' decks for the video, so I think we are ready to get this show on the road whenever you guys are ready.
All right. Hi, Chris.
Hey. How are you?
Doing well.
And guys, I'm going to go on mute while I'm doing the commentating, so good luck to both of you guys.
Thanks.
All right, cheers. Okay, so for this match, let me jump over to the whereby because the guys are in now. All right. So we've got Chris on the left, and we've got Tim on the right. And they're just doing a pile shuffle here. Okay, so both Chris and Tim are fairly new to Four Horsemen. I believe this is Tim's second tournament, and I think this is Chris's first tournament. So Chris on the left with the unstable Djinns and Efreets starts off with a first turn land tax. Now this will be really interesting because we've got land tax versus land tax. Both decks running land tax. All right, and Tim is on the play now. It looks like he took a mulligan, and he also plays land tax. So we've got land tax versus land tax. I would assume that Tim probably did some aggressive mulliganing there to try to make sure he had a land tax in his opening hand. And it looks like the blue count in the middle, which is a really nice way to do it, is his hand count. It's really cool and courteous to show your hand count there. So Tim is in a real conundrum here. If he drops a land first, then Chris is going to be able to double land tax trigger on him. But he did decide to mulligan, so he's one card down. He's got a Fellwar Stone, so that will give him an advantage where he'll have at least 3 lands available. But that's going to allow Chris to trigger land tax. Now let's see, is Chris going to draw more than one? Looks like he's just pulling one island here. If he had Ivory Tower in play, might play that differently. But I've also been a fan of not having to discard and thin out your deck really early. So I like this play on Chris's part, and that is a Zephyr Falcon. Looks like a Black Border foreign Zephyr Falcon that's been, or maybe a Legends Zephyr Falcon that's been autographed by probably a bunch of folks at a tournament. This will give Chris a early flyer, a turn to 1/1 flyer that can be unstable mutated. So Tim's going to want to be watching out for that early flying unstable mutated damage, but he's got Spirit Links, he's got Oubliettes, he's got Abyss, he's got a lot of cards, and he's going to just Spirit Link that Zephyr Falcon right away. So that guy won't be hitting in for early damage just yet. And Chris is not running those Boomerangs main deck, so without the Boomerangs, he doesn't have a way to deal with creature enchantments early. That is one of the drawbacks, and that's why I definitely recommend running Boomerangs for those main deck. It's a card that's not powerful in other formats, but it's super powerful in Four Horsemen. You just bounce the creature back to their hand, and the enchantment falls right off. All right, Zephyr Falcon number 2 is coming down on turn 3 for Chris, and Tim elects not to land tax. I am surprised there. I think Tim forgot. Oh, nope, he is land taxing. Okay. He was looking at his hand first. I thought he might have missed it, but Tim's a really solid player from what I can gather, and I'm glad to see he remembered that land tax trigger. I've forgotten in my matches before. We've seen many other players, forget to do their matches. So glad to see Tim remember that. Okay, so now Tim goes to draw step for him. Now, he can actually play a third land here and not trigger his opponent's land tax, which is really, really helpful. Super helpful to be running that Fellwar Stone. That's another card that Christopher Zach is not running in his deck. He's not running Fellwar Stones, although he is running a couple of Jaloon Tomes. The Fellwar Stones give you this ability to, get down to keep your opponent from being able to to land tax on you in exactly this scenario. Okay, so Tim is playing his Island of Whack Whack. And Island of Whack Whack is the Arabian Nights land. It's not actually an island, but it's a unique land, and it taps to reduce a flying creature's base power to 0. So with that, Tim will be able to neutralize that other flyer. Now, with the unstable mutation, the Island of Whack Whack does not neutralize the unstable mutation. The card's been errated to say specifically that it reduces the base power. So you can still put unstable mutation on one of those guys, and it'll still give them some power. Now this is quite interesting here. Chris is electing to play his Serendip Djinn, knowing that the Island of Whack Whack can reduce it to a power of 0. I'm really surprised that he is doing that. He must have an unstable mutation in hand then, and is planning to use it. So he'll have 2 big creatures in the air. Okay, so he attacks with the Zephyr, and Tim taps the Island of Whack Whack and reduces it to base power of 0. So since Chris played his 4th land, that's allowing Tim to land tax, to trigger his land tax again. And it looks like he's just getting 1 swamp. He must have a lot of lands in hand. And, oh no, sorry, he's getting 2 swamps. Gets 2 swamps. He can get up to 3 basic lands. Alright, he's letting his opponent choose which pile to put on top. Alright, now he gets to draw. So that's the power of land tax. He's effectively drawn 3 cards this turn. Super, super, super powerful. White is one of the more challenging colors to play in Four Horsemen, although William Kuhn had an amazing white deck that was really, really strong, that ran Army of Allah, Argivian Archaeologist, and Land Tax and Spirit Link. And he ran the Ashnod's Transmogrant and Divine Offerings and Dust to Dust, changing his opponent's creatures into artifacts and killing them with anti-artifacts, and then getting the Ashnod's Transmogrant back with his Argivian Archaeologist. Really cool white artifact deck. So there are some powerful white builds, but White's main power cards are these you see here: Spirit Link and Land Tax. Okay, so Tim elects to play a Maze of Ith. So now he's got 2 lands that can neutralize a creature, and he plays a Tawnos Coffin. And he's going to discard a City of Brass. So Tim has an unbelievable defense here. He's got an Island of Whack Whack, a Maze of Ith, and now he's got a Tawnos Coffin as well. He did play his 4th land, and Chris sacked one of his lands to the Serendip Djinn, so that allows Chris to then grab up to 6 basic lands out of his deck. Alright, and he's able to draw. It looks like he drew 6 lands, so he's really going to filter out a ton of lands, and I don't think he had very many cards in hand. But Chris is going to have a real challenge here, because he'll be forever stuck on 4 lands for the rest of this game if he doesn't get rid of the Serendip Djinn. He'll never be able to play more than 4 lands, but he may not need more than that. Preacher comes down. That's interesting. Tim doesn't have very many creatures, so every creature helps here. And Tim is not running blue, so he's not running Remove Soul and stuff like that, but he is running things like Ashes to Ashes and Oubliettes, as well as those Spirit Shackles, Greed, the Abyss. He's really done extremely well on his mana base. He's not been in any danger this entire game, because each time his opponent's played a creature, he's been able to play something that neutralizes it. Now this is interesting this is Spiritual Sanctuary. This is the card that allows you to gain players to gain a life. And Chris is scooping here. Now I'm kind of surprised to see that because he would have been able to gain life from Spiritual Sanctuary as well. Alright, so the guys are going to move quickly to sideboarding. If I were Christopher, I would put in those 3 boomerangs for sure. I would take out the preachers and the King Suleiman, and I'd put in those 3 boomerangs. For the Spirit Links, I think he's got to ditch those Spirit Links and put in the Mind Bombs. And honestly, knowing that his opponent is playing all these creature removal enchantments, I would probably think about ditching the Unstable Mutations. And he could put in those either the Dust to Dust or the Energy Fluxes. For Tim's deck, he's up against a control deck, so he's probably going to put in the Millstone and yeah, I don't know. I think I would just put in the Millstone and maybe take out one of the Jaloom Tomes, and he could probably maybe put in to take out one of those Spirit Shackles and put in the Felden's Cane and call it a day. Let me see where these guys are at. Oops, I should have been switching over to my PowerPoint. There we go. So, quick look at the decks here. I've been talking over what to sideboard in, and we'll look at these decks again real quickly, and let's see if the guys are ready to shuffle up and deal here. You know, when you think about the artifacts that Tim has, he does have a lot of artifacts. He's got 4 Felwar Stones. He's got 2 Jaloom Tomes, the Ivory Tower and Fountain of Youth. He's got the Tawnos Coffin and a couple artifact creatures. So yeah, I would say that the Dust to Dust would be very, very useful in this deck. He could probably do he could probably just pull out his Spirit Links and put in the Dust to Dust, pull out those Unstables, put in those Boomerangs, pull out well, he's got a Dust to Dust main deck, so he probably doesn't need more than 2. So I would do 2 Dust to Dust, 2 Energy Flux, and pull out the Spirit Links, and then I'd pull out the Unstables and put in those Boomerangs, and then maybe pull out the 2 Preachers and the King Suleiman and put in 3 Mind Bombs. Probably do something along those lines. Alright, the guys are still sideboarding. Chris is ready. We'll switch back over. Okay, Tim is shuffling up. Taking quite a bit of time to think carefully through what he wanted to sideboard in there. And now he's doing the pile shuffle. Alright. Well, in this match, I think it's going to be a hard uphill battle for Chris, but I think if he goes doubling down on the aggro strategy and the anti-artifact strategy with those boomerangs in hand to help him make sure he's got a way to deal with those enchantments, I think it will be a little better for him. Alright, looks like Chris is going to be on the play here. That first turn could really garner him an advantage. All he really needs is to have a flying man and an unstable. First turn flying man, second turn unstable. And this game could be completely different. First turn land tax. Looks like Tim did not mulligan this time, so he probably has a land tax. There's a Caracas and a land tax. Alright, Chris plays a second land tax and passes. Alright, and he passes turn back to Tim. So Chris is just going to play the waiting game. He knows that Tim eventually will have to play something. Chris is not playing any 1/1 creatures, any creatures that cost 1 white mana. So Tim can play the waiting game too. But he'd be in a better position to play into it and get that Fellwar Stone out like he did in game 1. Alright, so you can see Tim pensively contemplating what to do, to play a land or not to play a land. If he's got a Fellwar Stone in hand, I think that's really what he needs to do. This is interesting. Wow. Now that is a shocker. He strip mined his own Caracas. Wow. That is a very curious maneuver. Okay, so Chris plays his planes. And now Tim is going to be way behind in land. I'm strongly questioning this maneuver here on Tim's part. Alright, so he's going to be able to trigger his 1 land tax. So he strip mined his own Caracas. I wonder if he has just like a ton of land in hand, or he just needs black. Maybe he just needs black. He needs swamps, I guess. Alright, so he land taxes for a single swamp, not multiple lands. And goes to his draw step. I am really baffled as to why Chris did this maneuver. I guess he just needed a single black card. There's his Spirit Link for the King Suleiman. Okay, so Tim only has one land, so no land tax trigger for Chris, but now Chris has his third land, and he plays an island and then plays Jalum Tome. That's really good for the land tax. If he ever gets to trigger it, he can discard those lands and draw extras. Tim elects to land tax for a single swamp again. Interesting. Okay, so on to Tim's turn. He's been able to keep pace so far. He's not taken any damage yet with this very interesting maneuver, strip mining his own Caracas. Okay, so Tim discards a City of Brass. Doesn't want to be taking damage. He can just land tax for whatever he needs. Chris plays his fourth land and plays Serendib Djinn. Now that's super risky to be playing that card now, because I would much rather prefer to be at 5 land before I do that. He could have waited one more turn. Tim has so many cards at his disposal in his deck that can neutralize those creatures, including oubliettes, spirit shackles, and spirit links. So he's got 4 oubliettes, 4 spirit links, 3 spirit shackles, and an abyss. So he's got 11 enchant creature spells that can deal with a creature, and I personally would want to try to be at 5 lands and then play that Serendib Djinn. That way you can have a little more maneuverability in your mana base for the rest of the game, but maybe the aggression is better. And I wonder if Chris put in those mind bombs. The mind bombs, they could have been pretty good, but maybe not. I don't know. Discarding cards or paying life. There's the Island of Whack Whack again. That is really frustrating to see that card. It's restricted, and it's a one of. Tim's got it for the second time in these 2 different games. And he gets the Ivory Tower out, which is also restricted. He's got 6 cards in hand, so he's going to be gaining 2 life per turn. Chris activates Jalum Tome, discards a plains, sacrifices a plains to the Serendib Djinn, and draws. I also noticed that Chris, in his deck, take a look at Chris's deck again. Yes, he is running a strip mine, so he needs to draw into that strip mine, or he's going to have a real hard time because of that Island of Whack Whack. And then there's also a Maze of Ith in there, so it's got to be very frustrating for Chris here. I really empathize with this particular scenario. It's really uncanny that Tim got that one of Island of Whack Whack again, and it shuts down one of your flyers, and the Serendib Djinn has such a difficult drawback, destroying a land every turn. Eventually, Chris is going to run out of basic lands to land tax into. This time, Tim land taxes for a plains and a swamp, because he's got 3 lands. And then he needs to gain life from the Ivory Tower. So he goes to 24 and then draws. If Chris can get a strip mine and take out that Island Whack Whack, he may still have a chance here. But that Ivory Tower and the land tax combo is really brutal. This is where he really needs those boomerangs. And I hope he sideboarded them in. Alright, so Chris is going to activate his Jaloom Tome again. And triggers his land tax. Island, island, plains. Plains, island, plains. So he's getting 6 lands out of there. Wow. Okay. I don't know what his actual land count is because in his deck picture he just has a stack of plains and a stack of islands and 4 tundras. So I don't know exactly how many lands he has. He's got 7 lands plus islands and plains. So maybe he's got what would that be? Maybe 7 of each, or 6 or 7 or 8 of each, something like along those lines. All right, so he plays. What is that? He tossed it over there, and I didn't see it. What was that? Double blue. What is double blue? Is that boomerang? I can't see what card he put up there. What is in his deck that is double blue? Only boomerang. So, oh, unstable mutation? Maybe it's, he could have unstable mutated his opponent's creature. Alright, so he's going to gain 3 life. And he attacked with the Serendip Djinn in the... Okay, I guess he didn't put anything over there. Maybe that 2 blue was from his Jaloom Tome. It just looked like he put a card over there. Or maybe... I don't know what he could have done there. But there is a counter on Preacher. Double black puts the Spirit Shackle. Alright, so Chris is going to have to look up Spirit Shackle. I had to as well. Really interesting card. Enchant creature. It's reprinted. Put a enchant creature. Whenever an enchanted creature becomes tapped, put a -0/-2 counter on it. So I guess he's putting that probably on the Serendip Djinn. Okay, so Chris is doing the Jaloom Tome again. He's going to discard an extra island. And then he's going to sack his plains. And then he's going to trigger the land tax. If he's got any more basic lands in there. Kudos to Chris for hanging in here. He's not thrown in the towel yet. And then it looks like Tim is activating Preacher, so that will give Tim the Flying Man. So that's really rough for Chris, because now he's going to lose his Flying Man as an attacker, and Tim can block with it, And that kills that creature. So Tim's got a extremely powerful grip on the board right now. He's gaining life. He's spirit linked. The King Suleiman. Okay, so now Chris plays Serendib Efreet. So now he's got 3 creatures. And so it is an unstable mutation. I was right. He put an unstable mutation on that preacher, so it will kill that preacher. So it's got 2 counters now, so the preacher will only live for 1 turn more. That is interesting. That was a very interesting move on Chris's part. And the preacher remained tapped, so the flying man stays with Tim. Ooh. So, Tim drops the Abyss. And it looks like Chris is going... Is he going to scoop? I don't know if that's really game, but yeah, he doesn't want to play it out. That is frustrating. So Tim is showing his two artifact creatures in his Underworld Djinns. I do think if Chris had been able to play more creatures, he could continue to sack 1 creature per turn to the Abyss. But I think eventually Tim would have pulled ahead with all that life and Underworld Dreams and those 2 creatures. Very innovative and difficult, challenging deck that Tim has put together here. Gotta hand it to Tim. Super powerful build. Very, very challenging to play against. So let's take a look at Tim's deck again real quick. The Island of Whack Whack showed up in both games, and it was absolutely pivotal. I don't think either of these games would have gone anywhere like the way they went if that Island of Whack Whack hadn't have fortuitously popped up in both matches. And the Maze of Ith popped up early in the first game too. That one of Abyss showed its face, and that was kind of what put the nails in the coffin. That Ivory Tower showed up early for Tim and started gaining him life. This is a very, very difficult deck to play against. Absolutely no doubt. So hats off to Christopher Zach. This is his first Four Horsemen tournament, I believe, and he's made it all the way to the semifinals with a very cool unstable Djinns and Efreets deck. And hats off to Tim, who will be heading into our semifinals. So the winner of John versus Frank's match will end up playing Tim Kincaid for the finals game. All right, folks, that does it for our tournament number 14 semifinals match tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.